So, it's actually been a little while since I covered anything game related, which, if you didn't know, is actually the first content I created and what I was more interested in doing, seeing that I am a heavily active gamer as well as I was a speedrunner for quite some time. But aside from playing games in the background of political discussions and reactions to other people's political based content, I haven't really been focusing on gaming recently. I do still enjoy the occasional CSGO competitive game. Well, enjoy is a bit of a strong word, isn't it? But I do play an occasional CSGO comp game. Anyway, I figure it's about time we make something gaming related. Now, a game release that I haven't really had the chance to dive into yet fully, but I did play the demo and kept reasonably up to date on it because of how good that demo was. The game is Trepang2. It released to pretty decent reviews, and mostly everybody had the same idea of what it was: a spiritual successor to Fear, a game I have played through countless times. Actually, started to learn the speedrun for this game at one point or another, but unfortunately I just had too much going on to fully commit to it, and it's quite the run. Now, this game feels just so familiar to Fear in its gameplay, and among the seasonal releases of Call of Duty or Halo or all the other different titles that they just feel like they're released just to get bought. It feels absolutely wonderful to go back to the past where games were praised for pushing the norms and coming up with different ways to handle simple things such as the combat loop in an FPS, even if it was just for a brief time. Now, a YouTuber game reviewer by the name of UnderTheMayo's released a video expressing what he enjoyed about the game and where he also felt it was lacking in some regards. Unfortunately for him, this Zoomer gamer named Thunderstruck115, great name by the way, man, did not like that one bit. How dare you, Mayo? How dare you have criticisms to a game that he liked? The audacity you have to just not just shut up and absolutely love this game. Now remember that Mayo said he enjoyed the title quite a lot, only saying there are a few things he wished the developers did to make the experience more enjoyable and just an overall tighter, better loop. Really nitpicking at issues that he felt dragged the game down just slightly. You know, the type of thing game reviewers are, I don't know, supposed to do. It's actually almost painful how obvious this person is either just super ass mad about someone not sucking off the Trepang2 developers like he did, or just trying to stir up drama with dumb arguments and gotcha moments against Mayo for views. Seeing as how this isn't the only content this person has made covering Mayo videos, I think you know which side I am leaning on. And then you have this, which is his page as it looks like right now. So, yeah, we can kind of get a feel for who this person is right off the rip pretty easily just via his thumbnails. And, I mean, it looks like a wannabe Leafy page, for Christ's sake. Anyway, let's go ahead and get into this absolute mess of a video, shall we?
Hey, what is up guys, it's Thunderstruck115, and today we are going to be taking a look at a review from everybody's favorite condiment, Under the Mayo. The review in question is about a game that released about a month ago called Trepang2, which, let me tell you, is a fucking awesome game. And honestly, I think the only games that have released this year that are better are Tears of the Kingdom and possibly Everspace 2, though I haven't decided on that one yet. But in typical Mayo fashion, he loves to contradict himself a lot, as well as just miss the point of a bunch of design decisions. So anyways, let's go ahead and get into this.
Well, I've seen a decent amount of Mayo content. I'm not exactly like a fan, really. I don't always agree with what Mayo has to say either. However, I don't usually take him as someone who contradicts himself or often misses the point of game design. Typically, I disagree with him on smaller issues with games, or just we have different tastes compared to each other, which, of course, to each their own, right? But you claim that he does just that in contradicting himself and missing the point of a lot of game design decisions, and you act like this is a common trait in his videos or character. Interesting. Well, you're going to show us examples of those claims you're making in this video, right? You're going to show us examples of the claims you're making, right?
Trepang2 is a game I have a lot to say about. Fear, the game it's largely based on, is one of my all-time favorites. I've been anxiously awaiting the release of Trepang2 ever since the first demo, which I did not play. I saw it, immediately knew it was right up my alley, and decided to wait until it came out. I'm glad I did, because the initial joy of returning to Fear's combat does a lot for this game. If I had already spoiled it by playing the demo, I think I would be less satisfied with it. Because I am kinda unsatisfied.
And right off the bat, we already have Mayo contradicting himself. You decided not to play the demo because you thought you'd be dissatisfied, but you ended up being dissatisfied anyway when you waited for the final game? That doesn't make any sense. If anything, wouldn't it be good to play the demo before buying the game so that way you'll know if the game is for you or not?
Wait, what? Oh, our first example of contradiction is you not even being intelligent enough to understand the words being spoken into your ears. Holy shit, this is off to a top tier start. Honestly. Okay, let me break this down for you Barney style. Mayo is stating that he didn't want to play the demo and spoil the game's largest selling point, the satisfying combat loop, before the game released. You do understand some people make this choice for several different reasons, right? Whether it be because they are worried they will experience the main or only positives a game holds within the small demo they release, and then be annoyed at launch and not even be able to have fun with the start of the game anymore because they've already experienced what that start of the game would have given them. Or say the game has something they really like and it's removed in the main game, which leaves you annoyed that you experienced that original thing or feature and now it's gone. The vice versa is also true, seeing something you dislike and then being annoyed and having a less likely chance to buy the game as you had already played the demo and disliked part of it, when in reality the game released and that thing was no longer there because it's created by a developer who actually cares what the community has to say. However, Mayo did this specifically to avoid having the main combat loop spoiled for him, seeing as that is all the demo was, and just seeing the gameplay reveals knew this is something he wanted to pick up. So he'd rather have the initial excitement and fun of the game's combat loop at the full release of the game, rather than have it now and have to wait for more. This isn't some wild thing he just said. It's not wild at all. Unfortunately for Mayo, he said he was disappointed still anyway, because of a lot of other things he is about to list off further into the video. I agree, most times I would play the demo before buying the game and make a more informed decision like you said, but with something like Trepang2, a very, very niche style of game, it makes sense to wait for the release because you know you want to get it right away anyway. This is far from a contradiction, and at this point, I'm not sure you actually know what that word means.
It seems to me you could have saved $30 if that was the case, or at least make a more informed decision when buying the game.
It's a bit of a mixed bag, but still a game I ultimately enjoyed and would recommend. The combat is really good, the guns feel amazing, the effects and graphics and gore are impressive. It's great. I'm not going to get into that stuff too much here though. Instead, I want to talk about the core mechanics of Trepang2 and how great they are when they work and how not great they are when they don't. As I sometimes do, I'm just going to refer you to G-Man's review if you want a more general look at the game. He covers combat, weapons, levels, music, story, interactivity. It's a good review. If that's what you're looking for, that's the video to watch. Here, we're going to dig into some specifics that I think hold this game back. With 6 difficulty settings available, I went with number 4, very hard, just to feel it out. You can actually pick a difficulty before starting each mission, which is quite nice. Disappointingly, there is no information on what difficulty settings affect. Do you take more damage? Are enemies spongier? Are there fewer resources? Is the AI smarter or more aggressive? Do your powers burn out quicker? Who knows, and I'm not going to play on a bunch of different difficulties and spend hours making measurements.
Would it have been nice for them to tell you what exactly changed between difficulties? I suppose, but at the same time, I don't really think it's a massive issue when most FPS games out there don't really do that either.
But Daddy Mayo, my Call of Duty doesn't explain difficulty either. God damn it, it seems like you're incapable of seeing what he's actually talking about. Again, it's nitpicky stuff. I love when people do this because it's so common in the debate and politics scene. They take something that someone says and then they create a shadow argument next to that thing that was said and fight that instead. They fight the shadow argument that never actually existed, then act like you're being insane for saying things that you didn't say. Get this straight. You're the one acting as if Mayo put on his video that because they don't have descriptions of the difficulty in detail, that it's literally unplayable, 0 out of 10, dumpster fire trash. You said that you don't think it's that big of a deal, right? Well, I'm pretty sure here in a minute Mayo will say the exact same thing. I'm pretty sure he says something along the lines of, it's not that big of a deal, but it would have been just nice to have. Almost like he is giving, I don't know, nitpicky advice or critique to the developers. You know, that thing that game reviewers are supposed to fucking do.
They'll usually give you a very general description of how hard to expect it to be, which Trepang2 does, but most games don't. For example, Fear, Halo, Call of Duty, Wolfenstein, Bioshock, and so on. Alright, at this point he starts talking about what he likes about the game, so I'm just gonna speed past this so we can get to the actual juicy part.
Oh god. If this doesn't show you what kind of video this is going to be, I don't know how else to prove it to you. Holy shit. Talk about outing yourself in the first few minutes of this video. Damn. I also like how earlier you ignored Mayo saying how much he loved the game, how good the guns feel, how cool and impressive the gore and the graphics were. You're just going to ignore the fact throughout this entire video that he actually thinks this is a great game and this is entirely smaller issues he had. Aren't you? What a great review of a review video. 10 out of 10. Never watch again.
However, I'm far less happy with the stamina system because I feel it's confused. I'm not against the game having stamina. I do love the idea of killing enemies giving you a stamina boost. So if you're always in the action, you're never out of stamina. Super cool mechanic. But there's two things that are just killing me. First, there are plenty of sections where there's no combat, in the campaign levels and at the base, which is your hub world. There's nothing to do here but run to the mission select screen and run back to the helicopter.
That is a straight up lie, because there are definitely things to do in the hub area besides selecting your mission. There's a firing range for you to test out different weapons. You can equip whatever weapons you want to bring into the next level. You can equip attachments on your weapons before going into the next level, provided of course that you've unlocked them. There's the combat simulator, which is basically horde mode from Gears of War 2. There's the bounty board showing you the HVTs that you've eliminated and which ones you haven't, as well as any difficulty requirements they might have.
And you awkwardly run out of stamina on the way. And you awkwardly run out of stamina on the way.
Maybe you wouldn't be running out of stamina this often if you just let the bar recharge. Like in that footage of his, you can see that as soon as he has just the slightest bit of stamina, he'll go ahead and expend it. But you'll probably also notice that the rate at which he regenerates stamina is faster than the rate at which he consumes it. In fact, recharging your stamina really isn't all that difficult. Literally, it only takes like 1/3 of a second for it to go back to full, and then you can sprint for a couple of seconds. Now, could they have just removed the stamina mechanic from the hub area since there's no combat there? Yeah, they could have. But it's hard to go without pointing out the fact that Mayo is actively making it worse. As for the sections and levels where there's no combat, that's because it's meant to be a break in the action, usually an opportunity for environmental storytelling, with my favorite example being the Site 83 mission. Maybe the one point where I would agree with Mayo on this is the level Site 32, because there you're given a gas mask, which increases the rate that you consume stamina and reduces your movement speed, which I found kind of annoying, but that's one level in the game, and hell, that level is completely optional.
So, I'm gonna be honest with you here. I'm not entirely sure if I should even bother including this bit of the video into mine. Like, talk about such a petty thing to bring up. It isn't even relevant to the point that Mayo made. He said you run out of stamina running to the bird. Like, what does it matter if he isn't properly regenning his stamina after running? Does that, like, somehow make his point invalid? Does that mean he shouldn't actually run out of stamina magically if he just regened it better? No, you're just trying to throw a little jab to be like, look guys, LOL, Mayo doesn't know how to game properly. Act like that's some type of argument against the criticism he has against the game, that a criticism that's entirely justified. Now, as far as there being nothing to do in the hub world, honestly, I am just not a fan of hub worlds most of the time in general. Your bullshit arguments of, you can change attachments and there's a shooting range, like, cool, I guess. We could also just have a menu for that and save the time it would take to then move from place to place and start missions, and that would probably just be better overall, I think. The wave survival thing is kind of cool, I guess, but still, a menu. I mean, hub worlds overall are typically not needed, and in this case is just kind of implemented somewhat poorly. It's not the worst one I've seen done, but it's definitely lacking. Again, this just sounds like one of those super small meh critiques that Mayo is talking about, that, like, it's not that big of a deal, and only you are making it out to be some massive sin against the developers at this point, acting as if Mayo needs to be flogged to repent for his heathen ways, for dare criticizing the developers. How could you, Mayo?
Maybe they could have made stamina something you only deal with in combat scenarios. It reminds me of Nightmare of Decay, where they updated the game to remove stamina from areas you've already cleared to make backtracking less tedious.
Yeah, except the problem with that is that with the exception of Site 32, none of the levels in Trepang2 have any backtracking. At least not in the traditional sense. Now, there are some levels, such as Jorvik Castle, which will loop around back into an arena that you fought in previously, but you're not going back the way you came. And when you do get back to that arena, there's another combat encounter there. Meanwhile, the mid-level sections, where there isn't any combat, is supposed to get you to slow down. The whole point is to give you an opportunity to take in the environment and give you opportunities for environmental storytelling, and to find optional upgrades such as weapon attachments.
Going from actively managing stamina in combat to constantly suffering from its limitations when not in combat is what makes the whole thing feel confused. And the second point is that there's a horrible, horrible bug where if you press left or right with the run key and then press forward, you don't run. I'll break this down a bit for you. You cannot strafe run, which is fine, but you can run forward and to the side by pressing both a side direction and forward. If you press forward plus run and then left or right, you run diagonally. If you walk forward and then start walking diagonally and then press run, you run diagonally. If you walk to the side and then press forward and then press run, you run diagonally. But if you walk to the side and press run before pressing forward, the run command does not register. This also happens if you press run first and then move to the side and then press forward. In both situations, the run command is forgotten, and you're left slowly walking diagonally even though you're holding the run key. It leads to incredibly frustrating moments where you swear you're supposed to be running, but you aren't. Just because you were strafing around before you started trying to run, you can't run. I'd say 20% of my deaths were caused by this bug. Please, please, please fix this. How does something like this go unnoticed 3 years after the demo came out?
So at first I was going to counter this by showing off a bunch of FPS games on PC that do this exact same thing, but as it turns out, most of the games that I tested actually do let you strafe run in the way that Mayo was talking about. The only two games I tested that had the same limitation were Halo Reach and BioShock Infinite, with BioShock Infinite actually being more restrictive as you have to go forward, sprint, then side in that order with no deviation. But the other 6 games I tested, those being Call of Duty World at War, Call of Duty Black Ops 3, Brutal Doom's Tactical Mode, Singularity, Titanfall 2, and Borderlands 2 allow you to diagonally sprint in the way Mayo was describing. Now, I never noticed this while I was playing Trepang2 since I never try to diagonally sprint like that, and I honestly wouldn't have noticed if Mayo didn't point it out, but I can agree that this should be fixed. Having said that though, 20% of your deaths were from that. I can understand dying once or twice due to this, but it shouldn't take that long to adjust to the controls as they are. Like, you described 6 button permutations to sprint and 4 of them work. I mean, hell, I had to adjust to the fact that the game doesn't keep you running even if you just tap the run key, and instead you have to hold it down at all times. Which is very different compared to most other FPS games I've played on PC, but I was able to adjust to it without too much issue. So you're either lying about that 20% number, or you just seem to have an inability to adapt to the controls as they are.
Wow. Just tell me you're a Zoomer FPS player without actually telling me you're a Zoomer FPS player. For one, strafe sprint or strafe run is actually the right term there, which is really funny given the fact that you actually used Doom as an example. You know, a game where strafe running was such a critical skill. It was literally the only way you could move any faster than the default run. Also, you haven't played many FPS games that require you to hold down the sprint key instead of tapping it, and you used Doom as one of your tests earlier. Huh. You realized that Doom you either enabled always run, which made all of your movement keys always run, or you held the run key down to run. Like, you even have this in your fucking examples, and you make a statement like this. It boggles the mind. I admit I have been spoiled by modern games allowing the tap to sprint until changing your movement in another way style of modern gaming, but having to hold the sprint key is something that was very common for quite a while. I admit that he is probably being over the top and extreme, saying 20% of his deaths were caused by this, but your response is also just ass. Basically, either he's a liar, trying to hate on the game, which we know you view as an absolute sin, we get it, or he's just bad. Now, to be fair, retraining yourself in movement is probably one of the more difficult things to retrain in any type of FPS or gaming in general, really, but really much more difficult in an FPS title. Because you tend to just fall back on muscle memory in intense moments. Something like movement isn't usually at the front of your mind during like a firefight or something. You just allow your fingers to press the keys in the way your brain tells them without any thought behind it. So, if you're used to something working and suddenly that mechanic is stripped from you, I can see how that would be insanely jarring at the very least. In the middle of a firefight and suddenly you are forced to think about movement keys when you normally don't, I can see how that could lead to a few deaths or at the very least some annoying moments. And I agree it probably wasn't 20% of his deaths. But it's an understandable thing to be irritated with, especially when the game itself focuses so heavily on having a clean combat loop with good control and crisp response. It's definitely a negative on the game's record overall.
So, on the topic of things feeling confused, I want to discuss the weapon carry number and the modification system. For a game so inspired by fear and significantly ramping up the action and the number of enemies on screen, and the variety of enemy types, it's baffling to me that they would reduce the weapon number from 3 to 2.
Alright, Mayo, let me explain something. Trepang2 was inspired by Fear, but that doesn't mean that it's trying to copy Fear. For example, Infinity Ward is on record stating that the multiplayer in Call of Duty 4 was inspired heavily by Halo 2. But ultimately, the game ended up very different from Halo 2's multiplayer because it's not trying to copy Halo 2. And because of the way Trepang2 is designed, they felt that a 2-weapon limit would be better than a 3-weapon limit. And as somebody who has actually played Fear and really enjoys the game, Trepang2 feels less like Fear and more like Wolfenstein: The New Order.
I'm sorry, what? If this game feels more like a Wolfenstein game to you, wait. It's because you can carry dual weapons, isn't it? Because that's the only game your tiny little brain can come up with that also has dual weapons, huh? Whoa, bro, you can have 2 SMGs equipped at the same time. It's literally just like Wolfenstein, bro. No, seriously. This game is Fear. It is more like Fear 1 than the next 2 fucking games in the Fear series are. From gameplay, the slow-mo action, the movement, to the AI and the arena setting styled gameplay. This is a very, very Fear-esque game in all of the right ways. However, I agree, they were not trying to just outright copy Fear, they were trying to take inspiration from Fear and make the gameplay loop of the original Fear that they loved even better and take it into the more modern age. Unfortunately, they brought along the modern 2-weapon maximum with the modern parts of the game. This is something that I will get more into later because Mayo actually brings up some valid points about why it's an issue. Of course, the Zoomer just ignores everything he says and sucks off the devs a little more, getting closer and closer to completion, but Mayo does indeed have some valid reasonings behind why he dislikes the 2-weapon limit here in just a bit.
I simply do not understand this limitation. 3 was a good number in Fear.
Yeah, 3 was a good number in Fear. This isn't Fear, though, this is Trepang2. Part of the reason for that was because of how slow and methodical the gameplay was in Fear. Charging at the enemies to get up close and personal would often get you killed in that game because of how fast enemies would drain your health. Meaning, you couldn't just run out into the middle of a battlefield to pick up a weapon off the ground. As your only real tool to help you play that aggressively in Fear was, of course, the reflex mechanic. Trepang2, on the other hand, is much faster paced because not only is your movement faster and you still have the reflex mechanic, but you also have a cloak to keep the enemy heat off of you for a couple of seconds. You have a sprint and a slide ability, which you can use to zip and zoom around the battlefield. You can take hostages, which will cause enemies to hold their fire until you start shooting back at them. And then you can throw them towards others like a grenade. Killing enemies will refill your focus meter and temporarily give you infinite stamina. And with all these tools at your disposal, it is far more viable to pick up a weapon off the ground than it is in Fear.
It's like an endless spring of totally wrong statements. Fear was slow and methodical? Alright, well, let's see if I can still do this.
on the satellite.
Alright there, Thunder. What do you say now? You say running and gunning will result in you dying because of how quickly the enemy melt you in fear, or at least without reflex mode. Well, I didn't use reflex, and I just played through a lot more of the game than what I actually showed because I admittedly got a little distracted. The game is still pretty fun, although riddled with bugs and annoyances when trying to get it to run from Steam on modern hardware at modern resolutions. But anyway, that was the hardest difficulty in the game that I was playing on. I got melted sometimes, sure, but Fear loads you with so many upgrades, medkits, armor pickups, etc. that to say you can't just run and gun in the game without being melted is just wrong. Maybe, I don't know, get good? Fear, for all of its pros and all the fun the game had to offer, was still flawed. Among them were a very limited variety of weapons, for one, though the weapons you do get to use are almost all very fun and satisfying, excluding maybe the SMG, which just feels like a necessary thing to get you from room to room sometimes when you have run out of ammo and most of your other weapons. But you also have a rather limited gameplay loop when talking about variety. It's you walk into a room, enemy soldiers react, you kill everyone, you go on to the next room or battle arena. Although super simple, it's really fun due to how well they crafted the experience, but it's still very limited in variety. The biggest flaw of Fear, though, is its difficulty. The game is insanely easy. As you just saw, I went through up to interval 5 without using reflex once. I did die once, however. That wasn't a challenge issue. That was, I walked too close to an explosive barrel, not knowing it was an explosive barrel because all of the damn dust particles in the air made it impossible to see, and those things fucking hurt. There was no challenge in the entire game I played, to be honest. And the first few intervals are actually the hardest parts. The game gets easier after this. Sure, they add in some new enemies that some of them hit harder and some of them are more annoying to deal with, but you also have just so many upgrades. You are so stacked with medkits. You almost always have full grenades. You almost always have 50 plus armor. And that's if you're just barely paying attention. If you're just half-ass paying attention, running through the game, you will still find these upgrades pretty easily. I think I found 3 or 4 health upgrades just in my playthrough, and I'm not looking. I'm not exploring the areas I'm in. This is pretty much just running to the exit every time, and I still found quite a few of them. I think I was up to 120 HP by the time I stopped playing without looking. The game very quickly becomes a super simple and easy shooting gallery that never really offered much of a challenge throughout the entire game. Now, a lot of that is to do with the fact that they focused more on the gameplay loop and the fun mechanics rather than creating an interesting challenge for players. So it's not really a fault of the game, it's just something that it lacked in. But regardless, a challenge fear is not. So your earlier statements of just being melted and it being a tedious, meticulous game that you need to play very slowly because it's so difficult, are you just lying or are you just bad at the game?
You could have a shotgun for close encounters, an assault rifle or SMG because they're fun, effective, and versatile, and then keep a pistol on you for emergencies, or a sniper rifle, or the penetrator. Combat always felt very expressive because of this. In Trepang2, only having 2 weapons severely impacted my enjoyment and experimentation. I mean, I'm not gonna put down this shotgun, it's too good, it's too fun, so I can only pick up 1 other weapon from the other 6 or however many there are. Okay, well, a shotgun and a DMR pretty much cover my every need, but man, if I could just hold 1 more weapon, I would at least pull it out here and there out of a sense of curiosity and improvisation.
I swear, it is the exact same fucking thing every single time with this man. This is the same shit he pulled with Halo Infinite, it's the same shit he pulled with Ultra Kill, and now he's pulling it with Trepang2. This argument of, oh, this thing I'm doing is working, so I'm just gonna restrict myself to using nothing but this setup. Don't get me wrong, I love the shotgun in Trepang2 as well, but sometimes it's better to switch them out for a different gun, like the grenade launcher, the minigun, the SMG, or hell, even the assault rifle. For example, in the footage he's showing, the only way he's getting consistent headshots with a DMR is by constantly using the focus mechanic, which is a great way to drain it and not have it later when you might need it. While I'm not saying that you can't play this way if you want, in this situation it would be far better to run something like the SMG or the assault rifle since you can more easily get kills with it at the ranges he's engaging the enemies at. Meanwhile, the shotgun might not be the best option for going against an entire horde of enemies at once due to the time it takes to pump the shotgun. But if you had something like dual SMGs or the minigun, you could quickly clear out a group of enemies real quick.
Jesus. This is really where the kid's bias starts to show. Mayo is expressing something I've noticed personally with games in recent years as well. The fact that there is always a super overpowered setup, way to handle the game, or skill set that makes everything else kind of borderline stupid to even bother to use. Now, yes, you can indeed force yourself to do something to, like, handicap yourself in some way. For example, Mayo could have forced himself to pick up different weapons throughout the levels and only keep the shotgun or DMR, and the other would get cycled out every X amount of time or per level or whatever else he wanted to do. But Don't be fooled by what the Zoomer's arguments against Mayo here are. This is indeed a game design issue. The goal of good game design in something like this is to make every single weapon fun to use, similar in power ranges, or have reasons to use each weapon. I'll go more into that in a minute. Or have a mechanic that forces you to switch it up, in not such a scummy way, though. That way you can't rely on a single setup throughout the entire game and glide through it with ease, without ever really putting any thought into anything you're doing. I think the best examples of this are honestly Doom 2016 and Doom Eternal. Doom 2016 being the one that had an issue with good game design, eventually made it pointless to use anything but like 2 or 3 weapons, or just whatever one is the most OP in that moment, in that particular arena. Never really having a need to swap it up or experiment. The more you got into Doom 2016, the further you went, the more OP you become, and then some of these upgrades cause you to literally never have to put down, say, I don't know, like the chain gun, right? A good example is when you have unlimited ammo if you're above, I think it's 50 or 75 armor for the chain gun. Most arenas that late into the game, you will have that amount of armor or a modification or power up to give you a lot of armor. So you can literally just jump into any arena with the siege mode for the chain gun with unlimited ammo and destroy everything without having to swap weapons or bothering to try out new styles of handling situations. You just jump in, kill everything, walk away. Now let's look at Doom Eternal. The limited ammo capacity forced you to save the more powerful weapons for the more intense and dangerous demons, using your more standard weapons for more standard enemies. Then having so many enemies that you can't possibly just use, say, the shotgun or the heavy cannon to kill all of them due to your seriously low ammo pool. This forces you into taking weird steps outside of the normal box of what you would do. You won't just jump in with the chain gun and slaughter everything anymore. You'll be forced to try and test out new ways of handling every different fight and every different situation. No two arenas in Doom Eternal are exactly identical. They all get handled in a slightly different way, causing the gameplay to remain reasonably fresh and engaging throughout the entire game and for multiple playthroughs. Trepang2 doesn't have any of these balancing or features put into it. Trepang really reminds me of something like Far Cry 5. Sure, you can go around and run and gun, or you can use, I don't know, like the shovel launcher, or you could just take a suppressed pistol and a suppressed sniper and pick off every single person before ever entering the area, and Trepang2 has the exact same feeling. Like, why would I run in there guns blazing when I can sit 100 meters away and just pick off every single individual and then walk in and liberate a camp or whatever, a fortress or whatever else, and walk away easily? Trepang2 does have the issue where every single gun is kind of OP and the enemy are so easy, it's just a sprint fast, kill faster power sim, which is fun for what it is, but due to this design, it lacks any real need to experiment. It lacks any real agency in the game other than to just slide, shoot, slide. And you can do that with really any of the weapons that you really want to, and still be pretty successful at it. Meaning, if you find a combo that you like and works well for you, why swap? Why change it up in any way? Most likely, you'll just keep that same setup and never change from whenever you get it till the end of the game because you don't have any reason to. Then 3 levels into the gameplay feels rather stale and just kinda meh. That's one of the reasons why I think Fear had such inaccurate weapons along with being lower ammo pools. Not quite Doom Eternal level, but lower. It forced you to constantly be picking up enemy SMGs or rifles or penetrators dropped on the ground, or the occasional scattered higher tier weapons that you'd find, such as like the burst DMR rifle. And Fear did it in a way that felt good. It didn't feel as scummy as Doom Eternal. And by scummy, I mean it felt forced. Your ammo pool was so small that you were forced into swapping weapons every 3 seconds. It wasn't a fun experimental option. It was just, you have to do this, and it was very jarringly clear that it was a limitation on the game to force you to do something. But Fear didn't really have that issue. Maybe you could clear a room or two with just the regular assault rifle, but on the third room, suddenly you have 1 magazine versus 6 soldiers, and you can hear a heavy stomping towards you. Now you have to use something else. It also uses the same idea somewhat as Doom Eternal does, in the sense that different weapons have different pros. The early game 10mm HV penetrator in Fear is a great weapon for taking out heavies, who are less than annoyed when you spray a full AR mag or a few shotgun shells into. They brush that shit off like it was nothing. But it also has less ammo and is not really as effective for regular grunts than a normal SMG. The normal SMG can do the job the same as the penetrator against normal grunts, but it's far more common, way higher ammo that you'll find in the world, and honestly, the penetrator is just kind of overkill for standard enemies. Now, the same is true for Doom Eternal. Some weapons or weapon mods are more effective against different enemies or situations, causing you to forever be swapping up how you handle a situation. Now, of course, like I said, Fear doesn't do this nearly as jarringly forced as Doom Eternal does. Of course, they're both designed that way, and they're artificial in the way they're handling it, but one feels significantly more real than the other. And this is what you would call good game design. Something Trepang2, well, it very much dropped the ball with.
It's so bizarre to me that they would do it this way. But a 2-weapon limit absolutely can work if it has the systems to support it that push experimentation. Halo is the perfect example. Yeah, you only have 2 weapons in Halo, but in Halo you run out of ammo on the battlefield and you run around picking up other weapons to improvise with.
No, the reason why you run around picking up different weapons in Halo games is because of the different enemy-specific weaknesses, as well as weapons that might have advantages in certain situations. Like if you're fighting elites, you're going to want the plasma pistol to take out their shields, as well as a precision weapon to finish them off with a headshot. But those weapons aren't particularly effective against the Flood, so you might want to trade it out for a shotgun in that case. Maybe you'd have a point with some of the power weapons like the rocket launcher, but for regular weapons like the assault rifle, the pistol, the needler, the plasma pistol, ammo for those weapons are plentiful. The only 2 exceptions to this are Halo 4 and Halo 5, and in both cases, those games are worse off because of it. And the 2 levels that you show as examples in Halo CE are honestly the 2 worst examples you could have used to demonstrate this, at least on Legendary. Truth and Reconciliation starts you off with a sniper rifle with about 3 times the amount of ammo you can normally carry. And the level is primarily about trying to use your sniper rifle to the best of its ability and not wasting all of the ammo, rationing it appropriately until you can get to the next ammo cache to restock it. And then you're going to run with either a plasma pistol or a plasma rifle as your secondary weapon to deal with the grunts and jackals. As for the library, the best setup in that level is shotgun and then either the pistol or the rocket launcher. And even then, there's only a handful of rocket launchers throughout the level, so for the most part, you're just going to be running shotgun pistol. Sure, maybe you might briefly pick up the assault rifle to finish off a few infection forms after dealing with the combat forms, but I guarantee you're going to pick up whatever you were carrying normally right afterwards.
The level of dense this person is. They think min-maxing is the same as the average player, for one. If you're a normal player of games like Halo, you 100% pick up random guns in the field all the damn time. I don't know what the hell this guy is even on about. Battles in Halo, firefights in Halo, are usually really long and drawn out, and usually you'll use a good chunk of ammo out of your ammo pool per fight. So, yeah, swapping and picking up weapons off the ground is something that is really, really common. Even if not just for the limited ammo that you have, but just to avoid reloading or, grabbing another weapon because it's more effective, whatever else. There are a lot of advantages to just grabbing weapons off the ground when in Halo, and the game very much encourages playstyle like this. And sure, there are very slight advantages to different weapons in different situations and different enemy types, but those are rather minimal, and unless you're doing something like a challenge, you're most likely not playing with that in mind because of just how little those effects really matter. And Halo's an amazing game for this example. A game that doesn't really force you to experiment, but allows it and feels natural when you pick up 2 or 3 different weapons throughout a really long firefighter mission. It's not so much as a shove to the ground, but just a gentle nudge at the back to pick up different weapons and experiment a little more with how you're going forward in the game. Now, for the idea that ammo for all the common weapons is super available and super abundant everywhere, I don't even know what you're talking about. I have a feeling this guy plays all of his games on the lowest or one of the lowest skill levels possible. Anyone else notice that he seems not to be taking any damage throughout this video of Trepang2 despite being shot or nades blow up right next to him. Note that Trepang2 does have unlockable cheats such as unlimited stamina, focus, and of course, invincibility. Interesting, isn't it? The ammo for those guns are only super available and common if you hide behind rocks and cover to then tap away at enemies, min-maxing your ammo supply, something Halo for sure was not designed as an intended playstyle. If you're just running in guns blazing and doing cool guy shit to do cool guy shit, then you're most likely going to be picking up dropped weapons a lot. I'm not even sure this guy has ever actually played a Halo title at this point, honestly.
And yes, this happens in Trepang2 as well, sometimes, but some of you may remember a little game called Halo Infinite that completely broke the Halo combat loop by 1. Allowing you to pick a fully stocked weapon of your choice before every mission, and 2, most importantly, scattering ammo boxes around the map, allowing you to refill the ammo of your preferred weapon. Now, instead of being pushed into experimentation through ammo limits, you can just run around with the same 2 guns of your preference the whole time and approach every mission the same way. I never put down the battle rifle because I never had to. I guess people like this kind of player freedom, but I will never understand the appeal. It allows for homogenization of gameplay on a level that's just sad.
Oh shit, here we go again.
Yikes. Like I said, this person does a really good job at illustrating just what kind of gamer they are. If I had to guess, this person still unironically believes in either the PC master race or one of the 2 consoles are just the superior gaming machine above all else, and anyone who doesn't support that idea are actual peasants. I mean, look at these thumbnails. If you dare to disagree with something that this kid believes, then you're just a whiny little bitch. Meanwhile, like I said, I am pretty sure he's never played anything above easy in his life, which, hey, if you play games on easy only, then you do you. I don't care. But if you have little to no skill or play games on their easiest setting, can you then really critique the features and designs of the games you're playing? Do you really have the skill level or knowledge required to actually understand what you're talking about? Personally, I don't really think so. This is the kind of person to play an old school game like Silent Hill and complain that the combat is too clunky and isn't smooth or fast-paced enough because they have no idea what the fuck they're talking about. They have no ability to think past their Zoomer ADHD gotta go fast riddled mindset. If you don't have regenerating health and easy to kill enemies, then you and your game are trash. Anyway, I didn't have any real playtime on Halo Infinite, so I'll just let these two continue.
Like I explained in both of my videos talking about Mayo's take on Halo Infinite, having ammo crates in Halo Infinite does not break the core combat loop of Halo. First of all, these ammo crates are separated by type, so you can't get more ammo from the battle rifle if it's a weapon crate for plasma ammo. And number two, Halo has only really used strict ammo counts to balance out power weapons, like the rocket launcher, or the sniper rifle, or the energy sword. And there are only 3 places in the entire game that I can think of that have ammo crates for power weapons. One of which is in the main mission where your objective is to take down several phantoms, and those are there simply to make sure you have enough ammo for your rocket launcher and skewer so you can take all of them down. And the other 2 are in very well hidden places in the open world. Besides that, you're only really going to find ammo crates for regular ass weapons that don't really have a strict ammo count to begin with. 3, not all of the encounters have ammo crates to begin with, or ammo crates of the right type to refill whatever you're carrying. And 4, like I explained in the previous segment, the reason you're going to want to switch weapons in Halo is because of different enemy-specific weaknesses. A battle rifle is not going to do you much good against a brute berserker in Halo Infinite, but something like the Needler or the shotgun, on the other hand, will probably give you a better chance. And something else that somebody in my comments section pointed out ever since I made those videos, Halo has had stations to restock your ammo ever since Halo CE back in 2001. They were contextualized differently, but you could often find magazines and ammo for UNSC weapons by dead Marines, or around other weapon caches in the level. Meanwhile, ammo for Covenant weapons were in these crates, which is a different way to contextualize them, but ultimately it achieves the same goal. And again, I feel the need to reiterate that this is coming from somebody who regularly plays Halo on Legendary.
Trepang2 does the same thing. You can pick whatever weapons you want before every mission, and every mission is mostly keeping you stocked, whether it's ammo drops in combat, the eventual abundance of weapon boxes, where yes, you can find other weapons to use, but you can just as easily find a full ammo refill for the gun you've been depending on for the past hour, or side mission weapon boxes, where you can use credits to refill guns at any moment, before, after, or even during combat rounds. I wouldn't have as much of a problem with this if you could just hold a third weapon, keeping my primaries stocked and switching out a third depending on its utility and my own ideas for playing around and experimenting. But only having 2 weapon slots and allowing me to refill ammo so liberally, it's just Halo Infinite all over again.
Alright, now I'm not even sure what you want. On one hand, it seems like you want the game to be more restrictive with its ammo to force you to switch weapons, but at the same time you're saying you want the game to allow you to hold 3 weapons, which in turn would give you more ammo, and therefore give you longer to find more ammo for your weapons, which wouldn't push you towards experimentation. No, Trepang2 gives you plenty of options to experiment in its weapons sandbox, as you just listed, but you're just choosing not to engage with them. And I'm just gonna say that the ammo crates in Trepang2's main levels aren't as common as ammo boxes in Halo Infinite. Meanwhile, the majority of enemies either carry pistols or SMGs. That's not to say that they won't carry other weapons, but it's far less common. For example, the DMR that you love to carry around so much, very few enemies in the game actually carry that. And it doesn't exactly have a lot of ammo, so what exactly is the issue here?
No, you idiot. Mayo is being entirely reasonable with his points as well as being pretty easy to understand them. I mean, so long as you have above room temp IQ, this is pretty simplistic shit. He's basically saying he wants a fix to problem X. The issue of lack of a need or lack of a desire to experiment with the gameplay or weapons in the game. He doesn't care if it is solution Z or solution Y or any other. These solutions being either Z, giving a third weapon so that it is something you always have and occasionally break out to just fuck around with because you're far more likely to use a weapon you already have on your person versus dropping one of your other 2 to pick up another one. Or solution Y being limited ammo capacity so that you're forced to grab other weapons throughout the level in order to progress and continue on. He's giving examples of what he believes could be solutions to the problem he's already illustrated in his video. And you're taking it as he is contradicting himself because, again, You're either extremely bad faith and creating this to generate clicks, or you're actually just borderline clueless when it comes to game design. Starting to think that the only thing you've ever really played was like the Call of Duty series. That seems like your style and speed of game, honestly. On recruit difficulty, of course. I really don't know how else one could get these rather easy to understand ideas through your head. This isn't Mayo saying, game bad. This is Mayo saying, the game was great and I enjoyed it, but man, do I wish A, B, and C features were a thing, or maybe have some changes here and there, but overall, the game was great. This isn't rocket science, just listen to the words that he's saying.
Occasionally, I ended up in situations where I had to throw down my shotgun and pick up a rifle with only 30 bullets, use it up, and then grab something else, and these were some of the best moments I had. They're just so few and far between because the game seems dead set on making sure I'm as comfortable as possible.
And if you had the ability to hold a third weapon, I guarantee there wouldn't be any of those moments in the game.
It's so weird because Fear regularly had me in situations where I gotta set down that low ammo penetrator or assault rifle because picking up a new gun with full ammo is a more advantageous position going forward.
Yeah, that's bullshit. Fear keeps you absolutely drowned in ammo for pretty much every weapon, except for like a few special ones like the particle weapon or the rocket launcher. But ammo in that game is absolutely plentiful for every other gun.
No, you cannot be serious. I just don't believe you. You have to be bad faith and just trying to troll Mayo for views. You cannot be real. Fear does not drown you in fucking ammo. Holy shit. About the only gun you will ever have ammo at almost all times for is the SMG. And I feel like that's because, let's say 70% of soldiers carry that awful weapon. And guess how the game balances that out? It makes the SMG have a really wild inaccuracy and also low damage, meaning it is very ineffective and not a good weapon to rely on. It's far more effective for you to constantly be swapping between other weapons throughout the levels. For example, my usual loadout in the early game is the 10mm penetrator, the AR or SMG that I swap out constantly depending on ammo, because those, along with the shotgun, are the most common weapons for the soldiers to have. And then my third weapon is always usually the shotgun. I use the penetrator for the heavies. I use the shotgun when I get super low on my AR or SMG ammo in a longer firefight. And as I said, I swap those weapons out all the time, along with swapping out the shotgun for things like the burst rifle or other even more rare weapons, because the shotgun is easily gained back again after fighting more enemies once you've exhausted the ammo supply for those rare weapons that you find. Like I said, I'm convinced that this person has never played Fear past the easiest setting. Just in the clips I used in this video, there were several times enemies would take 10, 15 bullets out of an AR or an SMG. They're spongy as shit on harder settings. Not to mention the fact that to land, say, 12 bullets, you need to shoot like 20 because of the game's inaccuracy and weapon spread. Even more so if you're using the SMG at any form of range, and by range I'm talking like more than 3 inches in front of you. You actually have no idea what you're talking about.
It's sad to see that kind of design get pushed aside in a spiritual sequel. I'm not saying I didn't have fun or experiment in the sandbox. I did. I like this combat. There's good challenge and excitement to be had, but it certainly isn't as well designed as Fear regarding weapon variety incentive. I feel locked into things too often because of these limitations.
You feel locked in because the game isn't forcing a gun to your head and telling you what weapons you need to run at any given time. How the fuck does that work? You heard it here first, folks. Having player freedom is too constraining according to Under the Mayo.
I What? I have no words, no fucking words to explain how fucking brain dead that take is. My only real question, Thunder, is how does that Trepang2 dev cock taste?
and it applies to grenades as well. There are 6 different equipment types: frag grenades, flashbangs, firebombs, proximity mines, rat bombs, and tomahawks. But in another baffling design decision, you're not allowed to carry more than one type. I can run around with 5 frag grenades, which is nice, but I'd much rather have access to a smaller number of 2 or 3 different equipment types, to give myself more dynamic strategy options, like you see in Halo, like you see in The Division, like you see in Resistance Fall of Man, like you see in Doom Eternal.
He said it! He said it! Sure, you can only hold one type of grenade at any given time, but you also forget that you can also grab enemies, prime the grenades that they're carrying, and then throw them at enemies. And given how easily you can do this, that pretty much sidesteps that limitation entirely. For example, if you grab a regular soldier, it'll act like a frag grenade. If you grab a cultist, it'll act like a firebomb, etc.
Do I even have to add commentary to this anymore? Do I need to explain, like, what's so fucking brain dead about this take? Like, do I have to explain why it would be far better for you to hold different types of grenades as well as being able to do the mechanic that Zoomer115 is talking about here? Like, how could you not just agree with what Mayo said? How could you try and make this insane argument that, well, actually, you can throw different enemy types that then arm their different grenade types if you grab them, and that is like basically having different grenades if you just do these few simple steps before, like, duh. So basically, you don't even need to have different grenade types. Like, devs are so 200 IQ. Also, holy shit, I'm just now realizing this far into the video that this kid's 115 attached to their name. It's most likely in reference to that COD Zombies song 115. Well, now I almost feel bad. Almost.
Hell, like in Fear, you could hold 3 different grenade types in Fear and use any of them at any time: frag grenade, proximity mine, and remote bomb. Why couldn't we have that?
I don't know how many times I need to say this, Mayo, but Trepang2 is not Fear. It is not trying to be Fear, and it doesn't need to copy every single design decision from Fear.
Okay, so believe it or not, I actually do agree with you here, Zoomer115. This game isn't trying to directly be or copy Fear, but it is considered a spiritual successor to Fear. I'm not sure if that is exactly what the devs had in mind, but I do know that they were trying to take the Fear combat loop and improve on it, as well as making it more modern. So Fear is probably the best thing to compare it to, right? Again, this isn't some hard concept to grasp why somebody would compare a game that is taking the Fear combat loop and making it the main or core concept of their game. You don't have to do mental gymnastics to figure out why people would then compare the two games.
I don't understand how the developers didn't think that setting down a proximity mine to cover your exit and then throwing a flashbang into the next room wouldn't create more fun moment-to-moment gameplay.
Like I explained earlier, there's no backtracking in Trepang2 with the exception of Site 32, and even then, there's no combat during that section. So your exit would be forward on the other side of the arena, past all of the enemies anyway. And in most cases, that exit will not open up until you clear out all the enemies in the room anyway.
And another part of the problem is the modification system. Whereas Fear's weapons were static, Trepang2 allows for weapon customization through upgrade parts found in little bits of exploration and completing side missions. Now, I love the connection between side missions and weapon upgrades. Not only are these fun, action-packed, wave-based challenges, but you get something from it that applies to the main campaign. Great. Unfortunately, I think it just contributes to the confusion because when you customize and upgrade a weapon in a video game, is it not because you like that weapon and want to hold on to it?
No, when I upgrade a weapon in a video game, it's because I want to improve its ability beyond its base version. Which, funnily enough, in Trepang2, most of the attachments aren't straight up upgrades, as there's often some kind of drawback to taking them. For example, taking the bayonets on the minigun will increase the spread and reduce accuracy. Taking the scope on the assault rifle or DMR will reduce the hip fire accuracy. The laser sight improves your accuracy, but it also makes you easier to spot if the enemies either haven't been alerted to your presence yet, or if you're using cloak, etc. So it's less of a straight up upgrade and more of just tweaking the weapon's stats to suit your playstyle more.
Oh, for fuck's sakes. And why, oh why, would you bother to make a weapon suit your playstyle more if you didn't intend on keeping that weapon? Explain that one to me. Like, what are you even trying to argue against here? Also, earlier you said that there is no backtracking and totally lost the plot in what Mayo was trying to say about laying down proximity mines and then throwing flashbangs into the room of enemies. He isn't talking about backtracking. You're just smooth-brained as fuck. So what he meant in this is, I'd imagine at least, is that setting down mines and flashbanging the enemies in the next room would alert them. You then sit behind the door waiting for them to rush you. When they rush through, you then sit there and watch the mines go off, blowing everyone to hell, which you could then, I don't know, follow up with another flashbang into the room and then slide into the room with slow-mo on and dual SMGs just shooting up the place like it's a John Woo movie. Just think, please. Use the 2 remaining brain cells you have and think before you speak. This is a video. You recorded this. This isn't live. You allowed yourself to post these brain-dead takes to YouTube, for fuck's sakes.
This isn't Borderlands. I can only hold 2 weapons. I've got an incendiary round shotgun that destroys everyone, and a rifle with a laser sight and a 2x scope. I'm shredding over here, and yeah, that grenade launcher is really cool, but after I use it, I'm gonna have to remember where I dropped one of my modded weapons and come back to get it. It's a weird position to be in. Or if, say, my incendiary round shotgun runs out of ammo and there's no shotgun ammo in the next room, normally I'd be okay just dropping the shotgun to use another weapon for a while, and that's fun, but the next shotgun I find isn't going to have the incendiary mod, and I don't want to lose it, so I guess I'll just be running around the next areas with an empty shotgun for a while.
Flashback.
Occasionally, I ended up in situations where I had to throw down my shotgun and pick up a rifle with only 30 bullets, use it up, and then grab something else, and these were some of the best moments I had. They're just so few and far between.
So earlier you said you liked it when the game forces you to drop your weapon and pick up something else because it diversifies the gameplay, but now you're saying you don't like it when it does that. Mayo, I think you need to learn how to
Keep that same energy.
And alternatively, instead of remembering where you dropped your modded weapon, you can instead just pick up any other version of that weapon and then go to one of the many modding stations around the game, which are even more plentiful than those fucking ammo boxes you like to complain about, and then switch the mods to whatever you want.
Oh my fucking god. You are actually one of the most insufferable people I have ever had the displeasure of seeing on this platform. Like, you're actually going to ignore the original comments you responded to earlier, where he said he thinks the idea of weapon upgrades makes the game confused. Fuck. What he said makes sense. He wants more diversity. He is saying that why would you want to drop the weapon that is modded for an unmodded weapon? This is yet another example of where the game does not give you any encouragement in diversifying your play. It actually does the opposite. It discourages it. He also most likely here is talking from the normal player's perspective, not specifically his own. But I get it. You just really, really want to hate on him for some weird fucking reason.
I'd like to replay the game, and I would if it didn't force me to delete my profile. Yeah, no profiles, just the one. How does that make it past the testers to a full release? I like having my completed save because I can replay any level I want, including side missions, and set the difficulty.
What is up, guys? It's Thunderstruck115, and today I'm going to show you how you can replay Trepang2 without deleting your save file. So you're going to want to come over to this table here, hold select mission. You're going to want to select whichever mission you want to replay, which if you want to start from the beginning, that will be Site 14. Click launch mission.
Holy shit. This is fucking great. Just holy shit. I love that we now have confirmation that Zoomer115 played on a lower skill level than Mayo, but then tells Mayo to basically get good in the video. You've never played the game on very hard, or at least the first level, which, if you're not able to beat the first level on the very hard difficulty, I really doubt you're playing other levels on very hard. This is just, it's honestly, it's amazing. Just such a self-own while also trying super hard to be this snotty fucking prick to Mayo. Just top tier stuff, man. Please keep it up. But I also actually agree with you, Zoomer115. I think this is a kind of a needless feature. Maybe I could see it if maybe he wants to keep the save, but also start an entirely new game with none of the unlocks that he has, none of the modifications, no, just nothing. Just be forced to do everything from the beginning again, without the temptation of anything else later game that he might have availability to him in the save. He's already completed everything. So, again, I can kind of see both sides, but I'm going to have to side with Mayo on this one because it's such a simple and easy thing to do, to just create new saves or new save profiles. Like, that's something that I just think is commonplace in gaming in 2023.
Select your difficulty. And then you're going to want to make your way over to the helicopter. I know the stamina bar makes that such a frustrating task, but just bear with me. And then you're going to get to the helicopter. And then you're going to want to board the helicopter. And then you get to replay the game. Anyways, I hope you found this tutorial helpful. I know it's probably very hard, but, you know, I'm sure you can do it. Alright, at this point, he just does his outro, so I'm going to go ahead and end the video off here. But if you enjoyed the video, make sure you hit the like button and subscribe for more, and tell me what you think of Under the Mayo being an absolute clown. Again. Anyways, that's it.